All right. Well, I think there was good enough time to start for everyone. Be mindful of our time together this evening. Again, welcome to our virtual open house. This is the first time that we have done something like this, I think. My name is Dr. August Higgins. I am the program director for the Masters of Arts and the certificate in spirituality studies. And so I will kind of be our host for the evening. And so just I know some of you we've had conversations, email or phone or Zoom, but some new faces here. So really glad that you are interested in hearing more about our spirituality programs here and discerning kind of next steps in your vocations and training and study. And so hopefully this will be an informative and enjoyable evening for us to just to know more about one another. So just a couple of little shout outs here for some of our other Oblate people. You see Ali Tao there. She's our program
Hello.
assistant. And Father Ron Rollheiser, you'll hear from him here in a few minutes. And a lot of you know Dave Pakta, director of the Institute here. Michael Seragioli is one of our PhD students in the spirituality program. And I think that is, if I'm missing somebody, apologies, but I think that's all the names that I'm seeing. So those are some of our oblate people around. So just a kind of a preview of what we'll be talking through tonight. I will kind of introduce some of the programs, kind of talk about the school a little bit, and kind of what the offerings are in terms of spirituality studies for a few minutes, and then I will introduce more formally Father Ron, and he will kind of share some of his insights. He was the past president of Oblate School of Theology and sort of the brainchild of this spirituality institute that we have here at OST. So he's going to share a few thoughts on the state of spirituality in our world and kind of some kind of why spirituality studies, kind of a talk, and then we will spend the majority of our time this evening in some open Q&A. So if you have questions related to things that Father Ron brought up, things about the program, you've looked around on the website, you're trying to figure out our admissions process or tuition things, or you have questions about anything else related to that, then we'd be happy to have conversations there. So Ali, if you want to go ahead and pull up our slides. So yes, so Oblate School of Theology, we are in San Antonio, Texas, for those of you outside of the city or outside of the state. We do offer all of our programs in the spirituality world are completely hybrid. So you can be in campus in San Antonio, or you can participate virtually like we are this evening. We have students literally from around the world. We've got one of the soon-to-be graduates that's working on their thesis is in Papua New Guinea. So it is truly a kind of a global community of students here. So the first thing that we'll talk about is the kind of what spirituality at OST looks like, and it is a really kind of a unique endeavor. And I will try not to steal too much of Father Ron's thunder, but in at least the English-speaking world, Western Hemisphere, Oblate really kind of stands alone as one of the premier institutions that offers graduate level, certificate, master's, doctorate of ministry, and PhD programs in Christian spirituality. And that doesn't even count the continuing education, enrichment, retreats, workshops, various lectures that come through, all centered around Christian spirituality. So it really is like we have really a wonderful hub of learning and of community surrounded around Christian spirituality. And so some of on the academic side, for those of us, we're here kind of talking about our programs tonight. Some of the names in the field that are the founders and really world renowned people are affiliated with Oblate. So folks like Wendy Wright, who's there on the bottom picture, Father Ron, who's here with us tonight, Bernard McGinn, who just recently has retired from the University of Chicago, the leading voice in the history of Christian mysticism. Sandra Schneider's really foundational in establishing the academic discipline of spirituality. And then Philip Sheldrake, who is affiliate with us, also is a senior research fellow at Cambridge University out in the UK. So we have the best and brightest folks, just to name a few of the people that are kind of associated with and who you would have the opportunity of learning from. So one of the things about spirituality that is a little bit, it's a newer kind of discipline, right? It is related to other kind of religious studies disciplines like theology and scripture studies and church history and different things like that. But the focus here is really on the kind of the lived experience of faith. You know, what does it mean to say that you have an experience from God or an experience of the divine? How do you quantify that? How do you start to unpack that? What does that mean for your practice? What does that mean for your situation in life? That is in some ways very parallel to theological questions. You know, for those of us that are attached to ecclesial communities of some kind, you might think of this more in kind of theological terms. Where theology, I think, is a little bit distinct, is that theology will kind of fall along the boundaries of orthodoxy and heterodoxy or heresy or things like those kinds of normative categories. And with spirituality, when we talk about the experience, the lived experience of faith, it is really kind of looking at it from the perspective of what is actually happening, not necessarily what quote unquote should be happening according to some ecclesial or doctrinal kind of control. And that doesn't mean that we don't value the tradition or think of in terms of rightly ordered or Christian Orthodox categories. But spirituality as a discipline kind of takes an approach of learning what's happening, what are you actually experiencing, what is this person, what is this community, what are these cultures, what is this history actually sort of experiencing in their life, and then secondarily, how can we make sense of this in terms of our theological categories or our moral and ethical kind of inquiry, right? So that's one of the distinctions that spirituality has within the broader realm of religious studies, like scripture and theology and et cetera. So I think, Ali, you can go to the next slide. So this is a really exciting announcement. I think we are launching for the first time this fall a graduate level certificate in spirituality studies. So this is an 18 credit hour program. It is fully accredited. It is graduate level 3 credit courses that will be, you'll receive a transcript that will be fully transferable to an MA program or at Oblate or anywhere else. And it's kind of an entry point for those that maybe don't necessarily need a full MA degree, but are interested in continuing on their own faith formation. They're looking at maybe you have some sort of role, either clerical or lay in your religious community. You're interested in taking on a new endeavor in terms of spiritual direction, or just looking for your own kind of enrichment and growth, right? So this is an opportunity to take 6 courses. A couple of those will be prescribed required courses. The other 4 will be kind of set up for you to kind of play around in the elective space of kind of what you're interested in. And there will be there's no final project, there's no thesis paper at the end of this. So once you've gone through your 6 courses, then you are ready to receive your certificate in spirituality studies. And so we can talk through more about these things. If you have questions about stuff as it comes up, kind of keep those in your mind. If you want to throw them in the chat, Ali can help moderate that for us as well. And then the second element of our programs in terms of the academic program is the full Master of Arts and Spirituality. So this is 36 hours, so about double the the credit hours of the certificate, and it does include a final thesis or final project of some integration of your academic research that you've done over the years, and with some ministry or practical application kind of attached to that. So for those of you, particularly for those of you that are either in ministry service or thinking along those lines, this thesis project is a really good way of trying to think through how can I integrate what I've been learning into my own specific kind of ministry context or my own spiritual world that I'm wanting to inhabit in some way. The other piece of any master program, but particularly for spirituality, is it does serve as a prerequisite degree for future research. So for those of you that may be interested in wanting to do a full-on doctoral level program at some point, do some higher level research, then this is a really great foundation for that kind of work. So some of the credits that this is for both the master's and the certificate. The courses are going to be the same. You will sit in from the point of view of the professor. There will be no distinction between a certificate or a master's student. You're taking it for credit. You're doing all the assignments the same, receiving the grade the same. You can work through at your own pace. We have several students that are taking one course a semester, and we have several students that are taking 2-3 courses a semester, depending on all kinds of personal situations there. And as I said, they're available online and in person. And everything, whether you're a certificate student or an MA student, it is a master's level credit that you're receiving. So they are fully accredited courses, official transcripts for everybody. Primarily, we do an evening class kind of at this time, usually between 6 and 7 to 8 or 9, depending on the semester in the evening. We do offer, and we will hopefully be rolling out a few more options that will be probably asynchronous, meaning that you will take the class online, but it will not have a regularly scheduled class time. So you can kind of work at your own pace, go record, view the lectures, respond to the prompts, go through the assignments at your own pace. And in terms of the kind of the application for these programs, they really are geared towards the same goals, right? So this is part of I think one of the unique things that I'm excited about with the certificate in particular is that it offers folks an opportunity that maybe don't have the time, energy, funds, whatever to take on a full master program, but to receive the same level, high quality instruction and critique and review and learning at a little bit of a shorter, about half as much of a commitment there. And so when we talk about the program, right, so we've talked about kind of more in the abstract, what are some of the things that we study in the spirituality? And one of those, or some of those, are the mystical tradition, which is a deep and rich tradition stemming from the Old Testament and New Testament, going into the early church, through the medieval period, and continuing to this day, of men and women that have captured in some way a unique encounter with God, and are able to articulate that in sense of their own awe and wonder, silence sometimes, as a way of, as Bernie McGinn calls it, a preparation for an encounter with God. And so some of the masters of the spiritual traditions have been some people like Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, Julian of Norwich, Meister Eckhart, that have really kind of plumbed the depths as far as humanly possible, at least in terms of this presence of God in the world. And then that kind of history piece will be a big part of the content. We will, several of the courses will be introduced to several of these various traditions throughout Christian history. We also take on a kind of contemporary edge to our program. So actually on Monday, we will start a summer course that is on kind of a Celtic spirituality mixed in with some ecology and social justice elements. We've had classes on Dan Horan just finished up a class on social justice and spirituality, looking at Thomas Merton, who is a 20th century Cistercian mystic and kind of a cultural poet in some way. We talk about integration of psychology and spirituality, various ecclesial concerns related to church and the world, culture and context. In being in San Antonio, we are highly embedded in a kind of a hybrid Anglo Latino kind of culture, and so a lot of those kinds of conversations come up. We have folks from around the world, so there's conversations related to Caribbean and African and South American and Asian spiritualities throughout the program, throughout the courses, throughout the conversations that we have with one another. So we really try to give a good overview of kind of some of the historical concerns, some of the foundational kind of figures of kind of who you need to know, but also really trying to plumb those depths to address the contemporary needs of our world. So bring those questions, bring your problems, bring your solutions to those conversations as the coursework kind of unfolds. That's really the what gives the courses and the experience here a really good flavor, I think. All right, Elliot, next one. All right, so now some nuts and bolts here. We'll move kind of quickly here so we can get to Father Ron here shortly. The application process is detailed out there online. If you go to www.ost.edu, you'll find the links there. The deadline for this fall is June 30th. Now, if you're in the middle of that and you can't quite get your recommendations, or you're having a hard time working through a transcript or something like that, let me know. We can extend that, no problem, as long as you're kind of in the system, still kind of working on cleaning up your kind of documentation there. But at least having that application piece online submitted by June 30th would be really helpful for us. All right, and next, Allie. And then I'm going to hold this slide here for the end, but we will have there's my email there, and Allie, who's our admin assistant. Those are our emails there. So jot those down. Be happy to talk with you more, answer your questions over the next few weeks. And just as a little plug here, Dan Horan, one of our affiliate faculty, will be, he's just finished up this course on spirituality and justice, but is going to be hosting a Q&A on June 25th. So if that's of interest, you can get in touch with Allie. She can get you hooked up on how to register for that, to kind of hear more of kind of spirituality in action, so to speak. So for right now, I'm going to hold for questions. I'm keeping track of things in the chat, but I want to give Father Ron an opportunity to kind of share his thoughts and wisdom. So as you're thinking through what I've kind of blown through this evening, and as you're listening to Father Ron, send your questions into the chat, and then we will open up for Q&A here in a minute. So as I mentioned, Father Ron is president of Oblate School of Theology. He is an ordained priest in the Roman Catholic Church, a member of the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, the religious order that is the namesake of our school. And he has been a popular writer, speaker, columnist, retreat leader for decades, and has really been a central voice in the development and popularization of Christian spirituality. So Father Ron, thanks for being here tonight, and I turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, August. So first of all, everybody got good sound? Give me a thumbs up you can hear. Okay, I want to do two things with you. I want to talk a little bit about why study spirituality. And then if you're going to study spirituality, why study it at Oblate School of Theology? But first of all, why study spirituality? And I want to enter this by way of story. Sometimes one picture is worth 1,000 words. When we began our program in doctoral program about 10, 15 years ago, I remember one student coming in, he was a Protestant minister. And he applies, he says this to us, says, you know, he said, I'm a minister. I speak in church every Sunday. I've got an MDiv, a master's in theology. I know scripture well. He said, but you know, I don't know how to guide a soul. I don't know how to, I'm not a doctor of the soul. He said, I don't know how to do spiritual direction. I don't know how to direct somebody's prayer life. Half the time, I don't know how to direct my own prayer life. I have all this theology. But he said, I'm not a doctor of the soul. He said, I don't know how to lead people if they come with doubts and they're in depressions. I don't know what to do. He said, theology, for all its wonder, didn't teach me that. And he said, how do you become a doctor of the soul? Well, he came to the right place. But spirituality, it's intended to me, it's based on theology. We're not atheological, but we try to teach people how to read a soul, your own soul and other people's souls. Now, he was going in for a doctorate, you know, but many of you wouldn't be going for a doctorate. You don't have to be a doctor of the soul. You can be a nurse of the soul. You can be a person who's a registered nurse or a first aid, but to deal with the soul. You know, it's interesting. When he told me this story, it mimicked some of my own experience. You know, I first majored in philosophy, and I loved philosophy. And then I did 4 years of theology and got an MDiv, was ordained. And I felt ready as a Catholic priest. The first time somebody came to me with a real problem, I kind of looked over my shoulder and said, you should see a priest, not realizing I am one. Okay. See, I was trained, as this Protestant minister was, in scripture and theology and pastoral technique, but I wasn't trained in the soul. You know, somebody comes to me, direct my life, direct my soul. I don't know how to do this. I can teach you theology. And in a simple way, that's the difference between theology and spirituality. Theology is very important. You know, like we always tell our students here, theology are the rules of the game. If you're playing baseball or soccer, whatever, there are rules and you have to know them. But spirituality is the game. It's how do you live out your discipleship? And for many of you, like, how do you do spiritual direction? How do you direct somebody? How do you teach somebody how to pray? How do we know ourselves how to pray sometimes? Or how do we direct somebody who comes and says, I'm full of doubts. I don't know whether I believe anymore. Is that good? Is that bad? Spirituality looks at that, you know. So when this minister shared his story, it perfectly mimicked my own story, you know, 8 years of university graduate work. And I don't know how to direct somebody who comes to see me. You know, I can preach in a church, but I wasn't a doctor of the soul. I wasn't any kind of, you know, physician of the soul. You know, theology is a science. Spirituality is a medicine. And they're very, very important. And it's also, even in my own career of teaching, you know, I graduated and then I taught theology for almost 18 years. I taught at Newman Theological College in Edmonton. I taught at Boston College. I taught at Seattle University. And I taught systematic theology. And in Newman, I also taught philosophy. But more and more, I became almost, without realizing it, morphing into spirituality. And as I began to write books, I realized I'm writing spirituality. I'm using theology as a basis, but theology is a basis. It's a very important basis, but spirituality is, what do we do with our theology? You know, as I said before, spirituality, theology is those are the rules of the game. And you need those, but spirituality is the game. How do you live out your discipleship? How do you pray? How do you direct people? How do you read crisis and faith, and so on? You know, if you want to see I don't know what your tradition is, but if you want to see a simple distinction, pick up the work of a major theologian, Karl Barth, Paul Tillich, Karl Rahner, whoever, and look at that. Those are wonderful, important books. And then look at a book by Thomas Merton, or a book by Julian of Norwich, or a book by Henry Nouwen, and you'll see the difference. They need each other, you know. So Henry Nouwen is a wonderful spirituality writer. Karl Barth was a great theologian. Karl Rahner was a great theologian. So we have a theology faculty here, and that's very important, but we have a spirituality faculty where we try to teach you medicine. Whether you're trying to be a doctor or a registered nurse or a general practitioner, or a specialist who does medical research, or an aid, a first aid, an aid and first aid, this is your program. Now, in spirituality, you study the soul. As I said, so we're looking at understanding human nature. We're looking at understanding God's providence, forms of prayer, how to give spiritual direction. And for instance, how do you read depressions? Like, imagine somebody comes to a friend, or maybe you're working in spiritual direction, and they say, my life is falling apart. I don't know whether I believe in God or not. Is that bad? Is that good? Where do you go with that? How do you read that? Is that psychological depression? Is that a dark night of the soul? Is that a real faith crisis? Is it a crisis of imagination? So here we lead you through background to this. So as August said, you study the great mystics, you know, classical mystics in the church, but you also study great contemporary spiritual writers. You'll study Charles Taylor and Henry Nouwen and Thomas Merton, and great Protestant spiritual writers, and so on. And we introduce you to many different traditions. We're a Roman Catholic institution, and we remain Roman Catholic, but the spirituality program is beyond denomination. It's interesting. I'll just share this. We've had our spirituality program for 20 years, the PhD program for 15 years, and we've had people from every denomination. And during those 15, 20 years, we've never had a single conversion of one person to another denomination, and we're happy about that. Everybody who comes in here has left more appreciative of their own denomination and more appreciative of every other denomination, and not just Christian denomination, more appreciative of what does Buddhism and Hinduism and what do other great traditions bring to the table, and so on. So we're not interested in making you a Roman Catholic. We're interested in getting you attuned to the soul and to all the traditions. It's a little bit about what is theology. Now, why study here? Okay. Well, August made a pretty good case for that already. Okay, but just to reiterate, first of all, we have something we call the Spirituality Institute, and in that we have programs at all levels. We have enrichment programs where people simply sit in classes for their own just enrichment. They don't do papers, that's open to you. And then we have a certificate program that August just talked about, where you can do academic work for a certificate. Then we have a master's program. You can have a master's in spirituality, or you can go right on to do a doctoral program, a PhD in spirituality. And incidentally, as a doctoral program in spirituality, we're the first school in the United States to have an approved doctorate PhD in spirituality. And because of that, we're very proud of our faculty, and August had shown you the names, you know, but, you know, San Antonio isn't a theological hub, but we've been able to draw great professors here, as well as our own faculty. So, for instance, he mentioned Philip Sheldrake. Philip Sheldrake is one of the leading voices in spirituality. some years ago, in fact, August was in this conference too. We were at a major international conference in Rome, and there were 34 major presentations from around the world on spirituality. And the single most quoted author in all of those things was Philip Sheldrake. Our students were pretty proud, say he taught me. Or Bernie McGinn, who in terms of the history of spirituality and so on, is the most important English voice in the English-speaking world there is. In fact, I see David Pockness sitting there, and when David came here, he asked me once, said, why should I take a course on Bernie McGinn? I said, so he can tell your grandchildren that you once took a course from Bernie McGinn. Sandra Schneiders, for years she taught in Berkeley, and Schneiders is one of the major voices in formulating spirituality, the discipline. Wendy Wright, whose picture you saw, who taught for years in Creighton, teaches for us now. Dan Horan, whose picture you saw. Tim Robinson, who teaches at Bright Divinity School. You know, Michelle Jones from Australia, who's a specialist in women mystics. And then we're also proud of our regular faculty. John Markey, who's the director of the PhD program. If you come here for a class, you'll find out that John could teach any class in theology, spirituality, philosophy, or anything around the world. John is a species to himself. We have a young professor, Amy Maxey, out of Notre Dame, and Amy is a specialist in mystics, very popular with the students and a very fine teacher. August, whom you've met, David, whom you're sitting there, who are our young faculty who are emerging, and then lastly, and should be last, myself, and so on. As well, you know, August mentioned our programs, but beyond our programs, since we began our spirituality, averaging at least once a year, we have a major symposium on spirituality here at the school, and where we draw professors and papers and stuff from all around the world. Some of them are very academic, and some of them are very popular. So in June, for instance, we're going to have our summer institute, in which we're going to look at how theology and spirituality should see poverty. And we're bringing in Greg Boyle from Los Angeles, as well as a number of other people. So beyond our courses, we have at least one major event a year, some academic, some popular. Next year, and David is organizing this with the Nouwen Society, we're going to have a major symposium on Henry Nouwen, in which we'll draw scholars from all over to come here. Okay. One last thing, and that is we're called an Institute for Contemporary Spirituality. Notice there's an extra word in there. We're not an institute for spirituality. We're an institute for contemporary spirituality. And I'm emphasizing that for this reason. We are trying, now August mentioned this, we're trying to bring together the contemporary and the classical. So in our literature, we say we want to lead you and bathe you in the deep wells of Christian tradition, but with your contemporary problems. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make an interface. What are contemporary problems that people have never learned? The problems of you and your kids and our society today. But the spirituality we're doing is not some of the popular spirituality you see out there. If you go to a bookstore today, you'll see just a whole section of books in spirituality. But a lot of it is not that they're bad books, but there'll be books like The 12 Habits of Successful People, you know, How to Win Friends and Influence People, way back to Dale Carnegie. These are spirituality books, and they have their own value. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to take contemporary issues and then, you know, interface them with the depth of Christian tradition and the depth of the Christian mystics and so on, to help you sort this out. And that's the real ethos of our program. That's why, in fact, we started the program. There's a lot of popular spirituality out there, and don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but I'll be honest, it's not that deep either. You know, and it's not, it doesn't particularly help, you know, specifically in your Christian discipleship. That's why we call it an institute on contemporary spirituality. What are your issues? What are the things you're facing? We want you to bring them, and we're going to interface them with the depth of Christian tradition. What would John of the Cross say about that? What would Julian of Norwich say about that? What would Henry Nouwen say about that? What would Charles Taylor say about that? And so on, so that you're getting more than just the 12 habits of successful people, or how to make friends and influence people. So I'm going to end with a little plea and say, try us, just try us, try a course, try 2 courses. And I'm sure you're going to find a program and you're going to find a good number of courses that will fit your needs. Anything from enrichment to certificate to MA and so on. Like I said, we're trying to make doctors of the soul, but not everybody becomes a medical doctor. But you want to know basic first aid, and you want to know basic health and so on. So theology are the rules, and we'll know the rules. We'll also teach you the rules, but spirituality is the game. And we're almost 25 years old now. We've got a wonderful faculty, and my thing is just try us. Try a course, and you'll try a second, and you'll try a third. Thanks, August. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Father Ron, for that. So now let's open up and let's have a chance to do some Q&A here. So I see we have quite a few things here on the chat. So Allie, do you have any further etiquette or instructions for us before we move to the Q&A? How do you?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so basically, if you could either do the Q&A in the chat box or use your Zoom app to raise your hand, that would be ideal. You can ask questions to specific people. If you want to talk to Father Ron more about his understanding of spirituality, you are welcome to direct your questions at him. But I will switch between the raising the hand and the chat box. Okay, why don't we start with the first question, August? Is there a course listing for elective courses and certificate in the MA program available yet? So we don't have like a spelled out list of courses for every single term, but we have the fall one out right now, and I can send that to you. But we have Father Ron is teaching John of the Cross this fall, and then Dave is teaching an introductory course, and then what is the third one? Oh yeah, Prayer and Spirituality with Dr. Wendy Wright. So that's what's happening this fall. Anyone have other questions? Okay. And if you live in New York,
in the chat also the direct page to the spirituality. This is the MA program, but there's a similar link for the certificate, and it will have there. You'll see a little drop down about halfway down the page that has curriculum, and that will show you at least the core course rotations. One of the unique things about our program is that because we are such a popular destination for scholars in the field of spirituality, we have the opportunity of kind of offering some interesting electives throughout the course of the program. And we can't always anticipate what those electives are going to be. There's a wide range of elective offerings that happen, but that will give you at least an overview of the core curriculum. So yeah, let's see. Let's go back up to the top here.
maybe talk about the hybrid courses, how they
so
work.
let's see. Jody had a question about do I need a college degree? You have that?
Yeah, but if you could talk about how hybrid classes work.
Okay. Hybrid classes, they are the instructor is in the classroom, and there was a number of students in the classroom, but then the hybrid portion is something very similar to this, a Zoom platform for our distance and online learners to engage and participate in the course. We have several smart classrooms at OST that offer a pretty good user experience for our online learners. Some rooms are better than others, but we have some with multi-camera, so you can kind of see the students, you can see the professors, and so that's kind of how the hybrid class works. So you would log on at 7 p.m. on Thursdays every week and participate in the lecture and the discussion throughout the course of the semester there. So does that help to answer that one?
Yes. So someone asked if you can start in January. Yes, you could, although it's nice to start in the fall because we have the cohort beginning at that time. So we have all our orientation. There will be an orientation in January, but it is possible to start in January, but we encourage people to start in the fall.
Yeah, and we have a rolling admission, so you can even start in the summer. It's past that deadline now because summer starts on Monday, but next year you could start in the summer. So fall, spring, or summer.
And then there's a specific order in which courses should be taken. So we don't decide it specifically on that, but it is advised to take the class that Dave's teaching first because it's an introductory class and it kind of gives a lay of the land of what spirituality is and how to navigate that.
Right, yeah, especially for the certificate program. There are two required core courses. One of those is the Introduction to Spirituality Studies. That's a brand new course that's kind of being launched with the curriculum review that we've been doing. And the second one is a historical overview of spirituality that will give you a kind of a crash course of 2000-ish years of Christian spirituality. And so those two, I would recommend taking those first because it kind of gives you the kind of scaffolding that you can kind of use as your foundation. And then from there, certificate folks are free to move through any of the course offerings each semester as part of their kind of elective requirements to finish out those 6 courses. There is a few more of the core courses for the MA rotation, but there's no prerequisite, so you can take those at any order.
So maybe since the rest of the questions, the cost question, I'll message you guys a link directly to the OST website, but maybe Father Ron, you could talk about your contemporary spirituality class that you teach every spring.
Yeah. Well, I want to answer a couple of questions in the box there. Someone says, would the PhD ever be online? Now, I'll tell you what, the problem is that's not up to us. Our accrediting agency doesn't allow it at this point. So right now, we're accredited by the American Association of Theological Schools and Colleges, which is a hard accreditation to get, but they demand that PhD be in-house online, so that if they ever change that, we can look at that. But right now, that's outside of our ballpark. Somebody else had a question about how do you go about being an enrichment student? Easy. Got in contact with Allie, and you can take the enrichment student here in class, or you can take it online. And we have a much reduced tuition for a tuition student, for an enrichment student, and so on. So, in fact, oftentimes, if you're unsure and you say, I don't think I want to enroll yet, try an enrichment class. And just, sometimes they get in trouble with our faculty for saying that. I said, even drug dealers hand out samples. So this is a sample, please just try a class or enrichment or for credit. But Allie, in terms of the 2 classes I'm going to be offering next year, in fall, I'm going to be offering a John of the Cross class. And if you haven't been introduced to him, he is probably the greatest structural mystic who's ever written. And I try to put him into language for today. In the spring semester, I'm going to be teaching a course on, I call contemporary spirituality, in which during the course of 13 weeks, one night a week, we look at every major school of theology. So feminism, masculine spirituality, creation-centered spirituality, soul-centered spirituality, evangelical spirituality, Roman Catholic spirituality, Charles Taylor. We do the gamut, and so on. That's a course where you get an overview. But try, David's giving an introductory course in fall. And David, I don't know if you want to talk about your course.
Sure. So this first course really lays the groundwork for how to approach spirituality studies, and you'll learn methods of how to approach the whole subject. We're going to be talking about, of course, how to write at a graduate level, but then we're going to get into the spirituality so spirituality in history, spirituality in psychology, spirituality in theology, and then we're going to also do some work on primary text. So how do we read scripture from a spirituality lens? How do we look at some of the early church, medieval period, contemporary writers? So it'll really be an overview and an introduction to help people understand the field and give you the tools to really look at how to do this work. So we're excited about this new course.
So someone was,
There's
sorry.
a number of questions here. I'd like to answer that are in the chat box. Is there a specific order in which the courses should be taken to achieve certificate or MA program? Ideally, yes. Practically, not necessarily. Like ideally, you want to start with the introductory courses. That's the ideal way to do it. So you'd start in fall with David's course and so on. Practically, if it doesn't work, that doesn't rule you out. Okay. So it is possible to take courses out of order. Ideally, we'd like you to take them in order. Okay.
I'm in the MA spirituality program. And I think the introductory course really helped frame the rest of my coursework at Oblate. It excited me. It kind of helped me understand the baseline text. Like, what are we even talking about? So when we say spirituality, so it's actually been, I appreciated the order given, and I've been able to enjoy my other classes more. Someone asked.
So, all of this stuff is kind of set up as, kind of ordinarily, right? So assuming that you're starting in the fall, assuming that you have, you're able to go at a relatively kind of full-time load of 2 or 3 courses, then the course offerings each semester are going to make a lot of sense in terms of like how the program is sort of ideally structured. That's not to say that anything outside of that is impossible or even a waste. It's probably actually the norm. I think most of our students don't go through that kind of normal quote unquote route. Most of our students are coming in off semesters, or they're taking a semester off, or picking up a class here and there in the summer and kind of getting out of that rotation. And that doesn't really matter. It's just sort of, the program is set up to kind of build, but you can kind of fill the pieces in as you go your own pace.
There's also a question here said, the person, I live in Singapore, and if courses are conducted in the evening, I would not be able to attend live, but only watch the recordings. Is that possible for all the courses? Yes, that's the plan.
It's the plan. It's not being implemented all the way yet, but we are working very, very hard to get there. So definitely don't let your time zone difference be the deciding factor, because we can work through that no problem.
August, do you want to answer the fourth dweller question?
Janet. So if you're taking the class by enrichment, that credit can't be transferred, but you could apply for the certificate. But that taking a class as an enrichment does not earn you any credit there. So that's the distinction there between enrichment and certificate and MA. If you're in enrichment, you're not receiving any grade, you're not receiving any credits for that. You're just sort of sitting in on the lectures and there. For your certificate and your MA students, you're writing the papers, you're doing the assignments, you're receiving that grade. And so that's going to be the difference. Janet, is that helpful with what you're asking? And I should say this too, we didn't put this up on the slides, but there's another kind of certificate adjacent program that we've offered for the last, I'm not sure, Ron, how long, 5-6 years, the Forest Dwellers or
Yeah.
so. And that is a certificate for kind of second half of life spirituality. And so they work kind of on a 2-year rotation with some instructional pieces, some elder circles, some group discernment, and things like that. We are incorporating the learning component into the MA curriculum and the certificate curriculum. So you can specialize in your electives in a spirituality of aging concentration. It's not exactly concentration, but you can pick your electives, and there will be 4 courses on spirituality and aging that will coincide with the Forest Dwellers. So that's another kind of an exciting development for us. Let's see. Is there anything else that I'm trying to scan the chat, but is there anything else pressing that we haven't touched on? I know there's a couple of things about cost. Allie has, I think, put that on there somewhere. And one note about cost. There is the official cost of things on black and white on the webpage, but there are plenty of opportunities for scholarship, for financial assistance. We're working with some creative ways for sponsorships. So if you are, let's say that there are several of you I see Ottawa Church of Christ on my screen right now. So let's say there's several folks at Ottawa Church of Christ that would like to participate in a program. We can work with the business office. We can work with donors to make up a portion, if not all, of some of that cost. So ordinarily, sticker price, a certificate is going to be about $15,000, and the MA about $30,000. But that is without any assistance, which anybody that in the last 15 years that has applied for assistance has gotten something, and a relatively significant portion of that. And so there's always creative ways for us to make those ends meet and to bring costs down for everyone. So it's all sort of a little bit kind of confusing how our system works, but that's just it's kind of listed there. But don't let that scare you. Please reach out to me or to Allie, and we can work with you on some of those options.
Yeah, and hold in mind that when we get your application, which I strongly encourage you to apply just so we can see your specific case and talk to you about your background and what's needed and tuition wise, or what's your prerequisites count for. These are all things, if you apply to the program, we can see for ourselves and have an individual conversation specific to you. So get those applications in.
Yes, and so everybody has my email. I'll put it here in the chat again. Please reach out, because a lot of this stuff is we can work with you one-to-one on just about any of these elements. And so if there's questions concerning your background, concerning the prerequisites, one of the things about the certificate, I know I saw a question about needing an undergrad degree, right? The certificate, you don't have to have an undergraduate degree. You do have to have an undergraduate degree for the MA. But one of the elements that we're putting together here is if you can successfully complete the certificate, then that will count as an equivalency to move into the MA, and you would not have lost any of those credits. They will be fully transferable because it's inside the same institution. So if you really got your heart set on an MA, you don't have an undergraduate degree, successfully complete that certificate, and then you can reapply for that MA, and that will serve as that prereq requirement there.
August, there was one question that Matthew Lim asked, if you could answer that before we wrap up.
Let's see.
Is it possible just to sign up for the intro class before deciding on the certificate or the master's program?
I believe so. I will, Father Ron, do you remember about that? Because I think you can take up to 6 or 9 credits
Yeah.
before you declare,
Yeah.
before you have to be admitted to a degree program. So you would still pay the full price on that class, but you would not have to apply into the program. But you would be a degree or a credit seeking student. And I think you can do 2 or 3 of those courses before you would have to
Yes.
officially apply and become a full-time student.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. Let's see, Michael here. There's replies. What's happening? Yeah, French and German are definitely the languages of spirituality. They're at least the history of spirituality. So those are good languages to have if you're if languages are of interest to you. Okay. So yeah, there's again my email and Allie's email. I want to be respectful of our time at 8 o'clock. So if there are any pressing questions, feel free to hang out and we can chat. But otherwise, really do appreciate spending the evening with us, and look forward to talking with you all over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully seeing many of you online or on campus this fall. So have a great night, great summer, and thank you all for coming out.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Also, I attached the Eventbrite if anyone wants to sign up for the next event with Dan Horan on justice and spirituality. So you guys can click on that easily there.
Oh, great.
Thanks so much.
You guys can just shout out questions now if you have them. You guys also, you can schedule Zooms with me because I'm also in the program, so I can give you a personal testimony and we can talk about your own situation or like why you think you might be interested and what the thought process was of my application process and how it relates to yours. So I can come act as the program assistant or a fellow MA classmate. So
Well, I just wanted to thank you all and just tell you how grateful I am. You guys were an absolute blessing. Father Ron, what was the quote? It's the rules of the there's one is the rules of the game, and then there's the game, and that just made perfect sense. And I'm absolutely excited. I'm putting in my application right now, actually. So I look forward to talking with all of you.
awesome. Thanks, Ricardo.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Ricardo.
Yeah, and thanks for making this possible via Zoom. Just the ability to be online, to access things makes a huge difference. Thanks for tonight.
Of course, Michael. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, I
Thank
think
you.
of course.
Yeah, thank you,
Oh,
Kathy.
that was Kathy. Okay. Okay, I think we'll wrap things up then, August. I think some of these people just have us on their car speaker or whatever. So
Yeah, I think so. So, all right, very good. Thanks, Allie.
all right. Thanks, everyone. Hope to talk to you soon. Bye, guys. Bye, August.
Bye.